The Taxpert Tax Calculator app 2025 is the newest version of the calculator that we first released several years ago when the personal income tax calculation became horribly, horribly complicated. And over the years, this app has enabled us to double check HMRC's calculations. And I'm very pleased to say that these days, HMRC and we almost always agree on the tax calculation. Let me just put in a figure for employment income, let's say 120,000. Straight away you can see the tax there of 39,432. But look at this orange figure. That is the calculation that the HMRC calculator or your tax return software would make. And in that case, not surprisingly, the two figures are identical. If you get a difference there, it's probably because of an exclusion case, or maybe even my own pet topic, top slicing relief calculations. But let's now have a look at some of the other elements of this main screen, the main input screen. We can select whether or not at the start of the tax year the taxpayer had reached state pension age. This taxpayer hasn't, and so there's national insurance up here of 4410, that's the employee NI. But if I toggle that from no to yes, oh, it disappears because no NI for a pensioner. And then if we're a Scottish taxpayer, then of course the tax rates on non-savings income, employment income, self-employment and rental are higher. So if I toggle that from no to I, well, have a look at the tax figure, 39,432. That will increase to 44,278, a lot more expensive to live north of the border. And then something I introduced, I think, last year, student loan calculations. We can toggle from no to yes. No change. Actually, there is a change on this screen. Have a look at the net income. 67,000 odd if you're not repaying student loan, but that drops. Sorry, that's if you are repaying. That'll drop to, goes up. Got it the wrong way around, of course. But the difference there 76,000 odd if you don't is your net income if you don't repay student loan, but if you do repay, your net income falls to 67. And we can look at the student loan worksheet here. You can select what plan you're on, plan 4, plan 2, postgrad, plan 5. If you go postgrad, then it's a lot less in terms of repayments. So that feeds into the calculations. And that then gives me an opportunity to look at the personal tax client report, where we've got a repeat of the income and relief figures. Obviously, you can put in things like gift aid, pension contributions, losses, and then we've got what's particularly useful, the tax liability and cash flow implications with the HMRC figures, again in orange. And I'm happy to say we agree all the way down. But you can see here the student loan repayments have been added in. You can also put in the figures that you've paid or will be paying on 31st July 25. Excuse me, hay fever season to get the final figure. Oh, property income. I can add in, let's say, 18,000 of net rental, finance cost calculations. Let's say there are 15,000 finance costs, and that'll then automatically work out the 3,000 tax reduction. If it's more complicated, it'll be restricted. Again, go back to the personal client report, and there's the interest tax reduction, which again agrees with the revenue figure, reducing the overall tax liability. Now, new. No, before we get to new, let's just go back to the main input sheet because a particularly important area. I'll just reset all of this to 0. So do I want to reset the values? Yes, I do. And we'll get rid of the student loan as well. Oh, the property income stays there because you have to reset that to 0 on its own page. I can only reset one tab at a time. So reset that, and then we are now back to 0 on everything. Well, child benefit. Let's suppose that this taxpayer has received, that the household has received child benefit of 2,750. Will there be a high income child benefit charge? Well, if I put in self-employment income of, say, 70,000, then I would expect half of the child benefit to be clawed back because the thresholds now are 60 to 80,000. And if we're halfway between at 70,000, then half of the child benefit will be clawed back through the charge. And there it is, 1375. And on the personal tax report, I've got the 1375 being added in both by me and HMRC. However, if I then look at how much of that 70,000 related to transitional profits that have been spread from 23-24 over 5 years, those transitional profits are not taken into account when we're looking at the child benefit charge. So let's suppose I've got 15,000 out of the 70,000, if you like, the self-employment profits for the year are 55,000, but we've got to add in transitional profits of 15. Well, for high income child benefit charge, the income figure will only be the 55,000, 70 less 15 of actual profits for the year. And so when I click return, because 70 less 15, 55 is less than 60,000, I hope that 1375 will disappear. And yes, it does. And so it does for the revenue. So the high income child benefit charge for both of us has gone. Now, what next? Oh, by the way, there are various little widgets. I can replicate the income for the current year. So we can use this to forecast what the effects will be for the current year. There's also quite a neat little trick. In fact, the income is going to be the same. The net income, that is, because there are no relevant tax changes for this taxpayer in this scenario. But if I were in addition to anticipate that the profits had fallen to say 40,000, then we're going to have a reduction in net income. What I could do here is click on that, equalize, and now there's some clever stuff in the background that does take quite a long time on my computer to work its magic, but that will now work out the necessary dividend that will give us the same net income for the current tax year as we had in the previous year. And it's now finished all the calculation. I can see there a dividend of 24,803 on top of the 40,000 will give me the same 51,911 of net income. Isn't that clever? Anyway, what I want to show you before finishing is the new tab for capital gains tax. And of course, the capital gains tax calculations have become horribly complicated since the October 2024 budget. And gains realized before 30th of October 24, they can go into that screen or cell, whereas gains realized on or after 30th of October 24 are at higher tax rates now, so they go in there. But we've also got different tax rates for carried interest, residential property, and for gains eligible for business asset disposal relief and or investors relief. Now, let me go back to my personal tax column and let's reset all to 0. And imagine we're looking at a pensioner. And so we will have yes to state pension age, and they've got pension income of, let's say, £12,000. But in addition to that, they have got some capital gains. And if I now go back to the CGT column, you can see up here the available basic rate band is going to be 37,700. And that's going to affect the calculation of gains. Let's have a mixture here of 50,000 before budget day and another 30,000 on or after budget day. And we can see that the basic rate band available is allocated to the pre-October gains rather than to the post. And we can see that the tax liability is 12,710, and again, HMRC agree. And we can have a look at, well, the workings. In fact, all we do there is work out what the available basic rate band is, and that'll be the normal 37,700 in this case, because the whole of the income is covered by the personal allowance. If I increase that income to say 40,000, then some of the gains will be at basic, but some at higher rate. Of course, it will depend what gains we're looking at, but you can see up here, the available basic rate band has dropped now, and so only some of those gains are taxed at the appropriate rate, and the rest at higher rate. And that probably is as much as you would want to pick up during this fairly quick run through. If I go to the personal tax client report, by the way, then I have added in the capital gains tax figures down here. So 15,453, which again agrees with what HMRC have got. So quite a lot, and there's more that I haven't shown you. Quite a lot in this calculator. Of course, your tax software, your tax return software, will eventually give you the same answers, I hope. But this is such a quick and easy way of looking at the figures directly and advising clients on what their payments will be in respect of the year ended and what they might be in respect of the current tax year. Go onto our website, download the demo. Well, you're already on our website, but download the demo, and I hope that you'll both enjoy and benefit from using this tax calculator.